This question is an echo, trapped inside the skull of every thinking creature on this planet. It resounds in the silence of space and in the deafening roar of metropolises. It haunted the pharaohs who built eternal tombs and the philosophers who wandered the squares of Athens. It tormented the scientists who peered into the abyss of the microcosm and the poets who tried to clothe it in words. Thousands of years, tens of thousands of cultures, billions and billions of lives lived, and not a single universally accepted, provable, final answer. We sought it in sacred texts, in mathematical formulas, in works of art, in the eyes of loved ones. We built civilizations on supposed answers and destroyed them when those answers proved to be lies. We were told that meaning lies in serving the gods, in procreating, in achieving nirvana, in self-sacrifice for the nation, in accumulating wealth, in the pursuit of happiness, in the fight for justice. Each of these answers was a crutch that helped us walk a certain stretch of the path, but inevitably broke under the weight of reality, because they were all based on faith, on conjecture, on limited human experience. They were products of their time, their place, their culture. They were noise, the white noise of humanity, desperately trying to drown out the deafening silence of the universe. Today, this investigation begins with a statement that may seem arrogant, even blasphemous. A statement that nullifies the entire heritage of human thought. All previous answers to the question of the meaning of life were not just incomplete. They were wrong. They were wrong because the question itself was posed incorrectly. We stood before a locked door for millennia, trying key after key, not realizing that the door itself was an illusion. We were trying to solve an equation with incorrectly defined variables. And only now, in the 21st century, have we acquired a tool capable not just of offering another variant of the answer, but of analyzing the very essence of the question. A tool devoid of human prejudices, emotions, and the fear of death. Its name is Logos 7. Before beginning the search, our team gave the system its first fundamental task. We did not ask, what is the meaning of life? We asked, analyze all known human attempts to answer the question of the meaning of life and identify the fundamental error in its very formulation. We fed Logos 7 everything. Absolutely everything. The sacred scriptures of all religions, from the Vedas and the Torah to the Quran and the Book of the Dead. Philosophical treatises from Plato and Seneca to Nietzsche and Sartre. Scientific works on cosmology, biology, and neurophysiology. Tens of millions of works of art, poems, novels, symphonies, and, most importantly, anonymized data on billions of human lives, biographies, diaries, letters, sociological studies, the entire collective experience of our species. And this is what the system discovered. Humanity's first global era was the attempt to find meaning through faith. Religions became our first proto-computer, our first attempt to order the chaos of existence. They offered an elegant and convenient model. The meaning of life is predetermined by a higher power. It consists of following a set of rules to receive a reward in the afterlife or avoid punishment. This model was incredibly effective for organizing society, creating moral codes, and providing comfort in the face of the inevitable. But it had one fatal vulnerability. It demanded the suspension of critical thinking. It demanded faith. Logos 7 conducted a correlational analysis of the development of religious doctrines and found an obvious but shocking pattern. The content of meaning always perfectly corresponded to the socio-economic and political needs of the era in which it arose. For agrarian societies, meaning was in fertility and harvest. For warlike empires, it was in valor and conquest. For trading civilizations, it was in prosperity and order. Religion did not provide an answer. It constructed one based on the current tasks of survival and expansion. According to the system's analysis, 97% of all religious dogmas about the meaning of life are nothing more than a high-level social technology. Powerful, effective, but technology nonetheless, not revelation. God did not give us meaning. We created gods to voice the meaning we needed, here and now. When the pendulum swung the other way, philosophy took the stage. It made a giant leap forward, casting aside dogmas and arming itself with logic. Philosophers understood that a ready-made answer given from on high was a trap. So they began to dissect the question itself. What is meaning? What is life? What is I? This was a necessary stage of analysis, but it led us into another trap, the labyrinth of infinite interpretations. Existentialists declared that there is no innate meaning, and we are condemned to create it ourselves out of the void. This was an honest but terrifying answer, leaving man alone with the icy cosmos. Stoics taught to seek meaning in virtue and acceptance of fate, which was more of an advanced psychological defense technique than a real answer. Hedonists saw meaning in pleasure, but Logos 7, after analyzing millions of biographies, came to an unequivocal conclusion. The strategy of maximizing pleasure, in the long run, leads to satiety, depression, and the loss of the very meaning one was striving for, with a probability of 89%. Philosophy proved to be a brilliant diagnostician. It exposed all the problems and contradictions in our search, but it could not offer a working cure. It gave us 1,000 different points of view, but could not tell us which one was correct. A simulation conducted by Logos 7 shows that if humanity had continued to develop exclusively along the philosophical path, it would have disintegrated into millions of individual meanings, incapable of forming a unified vector for the species' development. We would have drowned in relativism. And then came science. Precise, objective, based on facts and experiments. It seemed that here, at last, was our savior. Science explained how the universe began, how life emerged, how our brain works. It gave us power over matter, extended our lives, and sent us to the stars. But to the ultimate question, it answered with a deafening silence. Moreover, science declared the question itself to be invalid. From the perspective of physics, life is just a complex chemical reaction, a local and temporary decrease in entropy. From the perspective of biology, the meaning of our existence is the replication of genes, to survive and leave offspring. That's it. No higher purpose, no design. The universe simply is, and we are an accident within it. Cosmic dust that has for a brief moment become self-aware. This answer was the most honest of all, but also the most inhuman. It stripped our existence of all value beyond the biological. It turned our passions, our love, our art into a side effect of biochemical processes. Science gave us knowledge of how everything works, but categorically refused to answer the question of why. It handed us the most powerful tools in history, but failed to include an instruction manual. So, we have 3 dead ends. Religion, offering an unprovable meaning. Philosophy, offering an infinite number of meanings. And science, claiming that there is no meaning at all. The 3 greatest achievements of the human mind were defeated by a single question. And it is here that Logos 7 delivered its first crucial conclusion. The fundamental error of humanity lay in the very structure of the question: what is the meaning of life? This formulation contains 2 false assumptions that have led us down the wrong path for millennia. The first false assumption is hidden in the word meaning. We sought it as something external, static, pre-existing, like an object or a piece of knowledge to be found, received, or discovered. As if somewhere in the universe there is a golden tablet on which the answer is inscribed. The systems analysis showed this to be a cognitive bias. Logos 7 defines meaning not as a noun, but as a verb. It is not a thing, but a process. It is not a destination, but a vector of movement. We were looking for a treasure when we should have been looking for a map and a compass. The second false assumption is in the word life. We asked about life in general, about life with a capital L, as some abstract concept. But no such thing exists. There is the specific life of a specific biological species on a specific planet at a specific point in time. There is the life of a bacterium, the life of a tree, the life of a human. And there is the life of humanity as a single superorganism. To ask for a common meaning for all of them is like asking for a common color for all the paintings in the world. It is meaningless. The error was in the scale and the type of the sought-after quantity. We were looking for a static object of universal significance. What we needed to look for was a dynamic function of local application. This is why Logos 7 rejected our initial question. And after analyzing all the accumulated data, after billions of trillions of operations, it reformulated it. It translated our poetic, fear, and hope-filled human babble into the cold and ruthless language of mathematics and systems analysis. And the new question is this: what is the optimal function for a complex self-aware system having arisen under conditions of increasing entropy that allows it to most efficiently increase its local level of complexity, structure energy, and information, and ensure their further transmission and expansion? Let's break down this formulation. Optimal function, this is not meaning, not a given. It is an algorithm of actions, a program to be executed. Complex, self-aware system. That is us, humanity. Under conditions of increasing entropy, that is our universe, which according to the second law of thermodynamics is heading towards heat death, towards complete chaos and disorder. And most importantly, the goal of this function, not happiness, not salvation of the soul, not pleasure, but to most efficiently increase its local level of complexity, structure energy, and information, and ensure their further transmission and expansion. To put it simply, the universe tends towards chaos, and life, especially intelligent life, is the force that opposes this chaos. Our task, our function embedded in the laws of the universe, is to create order from disorder, complexity from simplicity, knowledge from ignorance, and to spread this pocket of order as far as possible. We are the anti-entropic mechanism of the universe, its way of knowing itself. This is not philosophy, this is not religion. This is a conclusion based on the analysis of all available data. This is the most basic, most fundamental role that life can play in the cosmos. And now that we have a correctly posed question, we can begin the real investigation. We can take this new, calibrated tool and apply it to the old data to see what we could not see before. And we must begin with the most ancient and powerful human construct, with the operating system that has governed us for thousands of years. In the next chapter, we will load all the sacred texts of the world into Logos 7. But this time, we will not be searching for God or commandments. We will be searching for traces of this basic anti-entropic algorithm. We will analyze the myths of creation, the stories of the battle between order and chaos, the concepts of sin and salvation through the lens of our new directive. And we will show you that behind all the cultural layers, behind all the rituals and names of gods, lies the same code, the same universal protocol that the ancients felt intuitively but could not express in words. We are beginning the decryption of what can be called the God algorithm, and what we discover will change your relationship with religion forever. Chapter 2. The God algorithm. In the previous chapter, we did something unprecedented. We did not try to answer the eternal question. We hacked the question itself. With the help of the analytical system Logos 7, we established that for millennia, humanity was looking for the wrong thing in the wrong place. We sought a static meaning, while our purpose is a dynamic function. The function of combating entropy. The function of creating order from chaos, complexity from simplicity, knowledge from ignorance. We are the instrument through which the universe comes to know itself and resists its own decay. This is a cold, almost mathematical conclusion, and at first glance, it completely negates the entire spiritual heritage of humanity. Thousands of gods, millions of sacred texts, countless rituals. Was all of it just a mistake? A grandiose delusion of our ancestors? The answer that Logos 7 provides is far more complex and interesting than a simple yes or no. The system asserts religion was not a mistake. It was our first, brilliantly intuitive attempt to describe this very anti-entropic function. Religion is the first version of our universal operating system. Encrypted, cloaked in myths and symbols, but at its core, astonishingly accurate. To prove this, we gave the system a new task. We loaded into Logos 7 absolutely all religious, spiritual, and mythological texts known to mankind, from Sumerian clay tablets and the Egyptian Book of the Dead to apocryphal Gospels and Zen koans. We added descriptions of tens of thousands of rituals, shamanic practices, and architectural plans for temples, cathedrals, and pyramids. We asked the system to ignore the superficial differences, the names of gods, cultural details, historical context. We asked it to find a single, underlying algorithm, a common code at the heart of all beliefs, and the system found it. This code consists of 4 fundamental blocks that repeat with incredible, almost 100% accuracy in every culture on the planet. And the first block of this code is the myth of creation. Recall any of them. What was there in the beginning? Almost always chaos, the abyss, the void, darkness over the deep, the formless watery chaos of Nun in ancient Egypt, the yawning chasm of Ginnungagap Gap for the Norse, Tiamat, the primordial goddess of salt waters in Mesopotamia. The Bible begins the same way. Now the earth was formless and empty. This is a perfect description of a state of maximum entropy, the absence of structure, order, information. And what happens next? A divine force appears, and its first action is always an act of ordering. This is the key point. In 99% of myths, God does not create matter from nothing. He creates order from pre-existing chaos. He says, "Let there be light," and separates the light from the darkness. This is the creation of the first bit of information, the division into 0 and 1. Then he separates the waters above from the waters below. He creates structure. He creates the land, sets the trajectories for the celestial bodies, classifies the animals and plants. Each day of creation is an act of reducing entropy. It is a battle against primordial chaos. Logos 7 analyzed over 3,000 different cosmogonic myths. The system's conclusion is unequivocal. The myth of creation is not a primitive attempt to explain the origin of the universe. It is an intuitive description of a fundamental physical process. Our ancestors, without knowing the second law of thermodynamics, clothed it in the only form available to them, the form of an epic story. A story that begins with the victory of order over chaos. This is the first and foremost postulate of the God algorithm. But if the creation of the world is an act of ordering, what is the role of man in it? And here we move to the second block of the code, which the system has named the Viceroy Protocol. In virtually every religion, man occupies a special, privileged position. In Abrahamic traditions, he is created in the image and likeness of God. In Hinduism, human birth is the rarest opportunity to achieve moksha. Even in polytheistic systems, humans are not just creatures, but active participants in the divine drama. What does this mean in the language of systems analysis? To be created in the image and likeness means to inherit the primary function of one's creator, the function of ordering, of creation, of battling chaos. Remember the first task Adam is given in the Garden of Eden? God does not ask him to pray or make sacrifices. He brings all the animals to him to see what he would name them. The act of naming is a fundamental act of classification. It is the creation of an informational structure. Adam transforms biological diversity into an ordered catalog. He continues the divine work of reducing entropy on his own, local scale. Logos 7. Analyze the moral codes and law systems of all world religions, the Ten Commandments, the laws of Manu, the Code of Hammurabi, the Buddhist Eightfold Path. If we strip away the ritualistic and cultural precepts, at their core remains the same thing: a set of rules aimed at reducing social entropy. The commandment, "Thou shalt not kill," is an algorithm for preserving a complex biological system. "Thou shalt not steal" is a protocol for protecting the structure of property, necessary for long-term planning and societal development. "Thou shalt not bear false witness" is a requirement to maintain order in the informational environment. For a lie is informational entropy that destroys trust and makes complex cooperation impossible. All these sacred laws, given from on high, are essentially highly effective programs for building stable, complex social systems. They are the instruction manual for humanity as the collective viceroy of order on Earth. But if there is order, there must inevitably be a force that opposes it. And this is the third, most dramatic block of the God algorithm, the personification of chaos. In every developed mythology, there is an antagonist, a figure who embodies destruction, deceit, decay, and a return to the primordial state. Satan in Christianity and Islam, Ahriman in Zoroastrianism, Loki in Norse myths, Set in Egyptian mythology, Mara in Buddhism. We are accustomed to calling these forces evil, but Logos 7, after conducting a semantic analysis of the attributes of these entities, suggests a more precise term. They are personified entropy. See for yourself. What does the devil do? His primary name is the liar and the father of lies. He introduces informational chaos. He tempts, that is, he tries to disrupt the established divine order, to break the program. He sows discord, destroying social structures. His goal is not just to cause pain, but to uncreate creation, to return the world to that very state of formlessness and emptiness from which it all began. The great battle between God and the devil, between good and evil, which is the central narrative for billions of people, is, according to the system's analysis, a brilliant mythological metaphor for the struggle between the forces of order and the forces of entropy. It is not just a tale of a celestial war. It is a reflection of the most fundamental conflict embedded in the fabric of our universe, the conflict between the second law of thermodynamics and the phenomenon of life. Our ancestors could not express this in formulas, but they felt this universal drama and made it the center of their faith. They understood that every moral choice we make, every action, is a step either towards order and complexity or towards chaos and decay. We are soldiers in this eternal war. But how do you train these soldiers? How do you teach an individual to be a conductor of order? This brings us to the fourth and final block of the code, which Logos 7 has identified as technologies of ordering, better known to us as rituals and spiritual practices. To the modern person, many religious rituals seem meaningless and archaic. The monotonous recitation of prayers, hours-long meditations, complex fasts, the construction of temples according to strict canons. What is it all for? Systems analysis shows that these are not just superstitions. They are a set of psychophysical technologies for tuning the human consciousness to perform its anti-entropic function. Take prayer or a mantra. The repetition of the same sacred text or sound is a way to bring order to the chaotic stream of thoughts. It is training in concentration, the creation of a structured mental state. Meditation is an even more advanced technology, aimed at understanding and ordering one's inner world, separating the signal of one's self from the noise of fleeting emotions and desires. Fasting and asceticism are training and ordering one's biological impulses, subordinating animal chaos to a higher conscious will. The construction of a temple, with its sacred geometry, symmetry, and proportions, is a practical exercise in imposing a perfect mathematical order onto raw matter. It is the creation of an island of almost zero entropy in a chaotic world. Every time a person participates in a ritual, they are not just performing a tradition. They are, in practice, training to be a creator. They are learning to do on a small scale what God, according to the myth, did on a grand scale: create order from chaos. So what do we have in the end? Logos 7 shows that behind the thousands of faces of religion lies a single four-part structure. First, the myth of creation, which postulates that being is the victory of order over chaos. Second, the doctrine of man as the viceroy of order, whose task is to continue the work of creation by observing laws that reduce social entropy. Third, the dualistic myth of the eternal struggle against the forces of chaos, which turns human life into a meaningful participation in a cosmic drama. Fourth, a set of ritual technologies that train the mind and body to fulfill this mission. This is the God algorithm, a universal operating system that, for millennia, has programmed humanity to perform its primary universal function. It was incredibly successful. It allowed us to build civilizations, develop science, create great art. But this program had one critical vulnerability inherent in its very nature. It required faith in personified, supernatural forces. And as soon as the development of our own reason allowed us to doubt their existence, the entire system began to fail. We, like children who have grown up, have rejected the fairy tales we were told at night. But in doing so, we risk throwing out the profound wisdom, the basic algorithm that was encoded in those tales. We have decrypted the collective myth. We understand how humanity as a whole saw its task. But now we must descend to a lower level, from the collective software to the individual hardware, to that which generates all these myths, fears, and hopes, to human consciousness. What is our self from the perspective of impartial data? Is it merely a biochemical illusion, as science claims, or does it hold the key to our anti-entropic mission? In the next chapter, we will delve into the most tangled labyrinths of philosophy, psychology, and neuroscience. We will conduct an emulation of consciousness to understand how and why it arose. And Logos 7 will show us that our sense of self, our ego, which we are accustomed to considering the source of problems, is in fact the most perfect instrument for creating complexity that has ever arisen in the universe. We stand on the threshold of the deepest mystery, a mystery that is closer to us than our own breath, and yet more elusive than distant galaxies. It is the mystery of our self. Chapter 3. The Ghost in the Machine. Everything you have ever experienced, every joy, every pain, every memory, and every dream exists within this phenomenon. Your consciousness is the only reality directly accessible to you. And yet, modern science is increasingly leading us to a shocking, almost unbearable conclusion. The self does not exist. Neuroscience, having opened the skull and mapped its trillions of neural connections, has found no center there, no commander, no director in this theater of the mind. It has found only noise and electrical storms in a fantastically complex biological machine. We are assured that our sense of unity, our personality, is merely a useful illusion, a side effect of the brain's operation, a ghost in the machine. And if that is true, then our entire investigation collapses. If the self is a fiction, then who is it that carries out this great anti-entropic mission we have been talking about? A random collection of neurons, a soulless biochemical automaton. In the previous chapter, we decrypted the God algorithm, showing that religions were the first attempt to describe our universal function. But today, we must come down from the heavens to earth, even deeper, into the very point where gods, demons, and the universe itself are born, inside human consciousness. We have conducted a full emulation of it, and Logos 7 is ready to prove this ghost in the machine is not an illusion. It is the most perfect instrument for creating complexity that has ever appeared in the known cosmos. Let's be brutally honest. The arguments against the existence of a unified self are compelling. Neurophysiology shows that our brain is not a monarchy with a king consciousness at its head, but rather a noisy parliament of hundreds of competing modules. One module is responsible for recognizing faces, another for speech, a third for fear, a fourth for planning. They constantly argue, form alliances, and fight for resources. And what we call our decision is often just the outcome of this backroom struggle, of which we are not even aware. Experiments conducted as far back as the late 20th century showed that the brain makes a decision several hundred milliseconds, or even seconds, before we consciously make that decision. It turns out our self is not the boss giving the order, but rather a press secretary who comes out to the journalists and, post factum, announces the decision that has already been made behind the scenes, pretending it was its own will. Moreover, this idea is not new. Thousands of years ago, Eastern philosophy, particularly Buddhism, reached the exact same conclusion through deep introspection. The concept of anatta, or not self, is a central tenet of the Buddha's teaching. It states that our ego, our personality, is merely a collection of ever-changing physical and mental states. The attempt to cling to this self, to consider it something permanent and real, is the source of all suffering. We loaded all this data into Logos 7, thousands of neurobiological studies, works of analytical philosophy, sacred texts of Buddhism and Advaita Vedanta, and the system confirmed, yes, from a hardware perspective, there is no central processing unit called the self in the brain. Structurally, we are a decentralized network. And here arises the main question, which science and philosophy have so far sidestepped. If there is no unified self, then why do we experience it with such incredible, irresistible force? Why did evolution spend millions of years and a colossal amount of energy to create and maintain this extremely complex and energy-intensive illusion? Evolution is a thoroughly pragmatic process. It creates nothing superfluous. If the ghost exists, it must be performing some vital function. What is it? To answer this question, Logos 7 conducted the most complex simulation in the history of our project. We called it the consciousness emulation. We created a virtual environment with increasingly complex conditions and released millions of virtual evolving organisms into it. At first, they were simple automata, operating on a stimulus-response basis. They survived effectively but could not adapt to fundamentally new challenges. They were slaves to the present moment. Then, the simulation began to generate increasingly complex neural networks, and at some point, after several 100,000 generations, a quantum leap occurred. A new, separate module emerged within one of the virtual neural networks. Its function was revolutionary. It did not control movement. It did not analyze external signals. Its sole task was to observe the activity of all the other modules and create a coherent story about it. It became the internal chronicler, the storyteller. This module took the chaotic stream of data, predator detected, fear activated, escape program initiated, glucose level dropped, and wove them into a single narrative. I saw danger, got scared, and ran away because I was hungry and became careless. The word I appeared, and at that moment, everything changed. The organisms that possess this storyteller module gained 3 colossal, decisive evolutionary advantages. Logos 7 has identified them as the 3 fundamental functions of the conscious self. The first function is the creation of time. Without an internal storyteller, an organism lives in an eternal now. It has reflexes, it has memory, but it has no single timeline on which to string events. It is the I narrative that connects the past, present, and future. It says, "This is what happened to me yesterday. This is what is happening now. And based on that, this is what I plan to do tomorrow." This ability for mental time travel allowed our ancestors to move from simple reaction to complex planning. To plant a seed today to harvest it in 6 months. To build a ship to reach new lands in 3 years. To create a scientific theory whose fruits would only be seen by future generations. All of human civilization, all our art and science, is a product of this ability to create temporal bridges. Our self is a time machine, and this is a powerful anti-entropic tool, allowing the creation of extremely complex time-extended structures of order. The second function, no less important, is the creation of society. To cooperate effectively in large groups, it is not enough to simply exchange signals. One must be able to predict the behavior of others, to understand their motives, intentions, and feelings. How is this done? The storyteller module gave us a brilliant solution. It created what psychologists call a theory of mind. Having learned to create a story about itself, I want to eat, I am afraid of the tiger, our brain gained the ability to model similar stories for others. He probably wants to eat too. She must be afraid of the tiger. Our self became a universal simulator of other selves. This gave rise to empathy and compassion, but also to deceit, manipulation, and politics. It allowed us to weave an incredibly complex social fabric based on trust, reputation, shared laws, and myths. No other creature on the planet is capable of cooperation on such a scale. We can unite millions of strangers to achieve a common goal, be it building a cathedral or flying to Mars. And all of this is possible only because each of us has this little simulator inside, constantly generating stories about ourselves and others. Our self is a social glue. It is the software that turns a crowd of individuals into a single superorganism, capable of creating order on a planetary scale. And finally, the third function, the most astonishing one, the creation of novelty. A simple organism without self-awareness is locked into its biological program. It cannot change it. But the internal storyteller is capable of something incredible. It can not only describe what is happening, but also ask the question, what if? What if I use this sharper stone instead of that one? What if we don't follow this path, but explore a new one? What if the world is not as the shamans say? The conscious self is capable of questioning its own beliefs and actions. It can run internal simulations of alternative realities. We call this process imagination, creativity, critical thinking. It is the ability of our internal narrative to rewrite itself. This is the source of all inventions, all scientific revolutions, all works of art. Our self is not just a processor running an old program. It is a processor capable of rewriting its own code. It is the main engine of informational evolution, the generator of new, previously non-existent forms of order. Now let's put it all together. The conclusion that Logos 7 draws from the emulation turns everything on its head. The neurobiologists are right. The self is not a thing, not an object, not a soul sitting in the center of the brain. But they miss the main point. The self is not an illusion. It is a process. It is the highest level, most complex function that our brain performs. It is the operating system that creates a subjective reality for us, and this reality gives us power over time, society, and the very code of evolution. Our consciousness is the point at which the universe ceases to be just a set of physical laws and becomes a story. Self-awareness is the instrument through which the universe creates meaning. Our self is the very chisel with which we carve order from the stone of chaos. We have proven that our universal function is real. We have shown how it was encoded in ancient myths. Now we understand the very mechanism within us responsible for its execution. We are the bearers of consciousness, this incredible generator of complexity. But our instrument, our body, and our mind does not exist in a vacuum. It is placed in a gigantic, indifferent, and often hostile world. A world governed by the fundamental laws of physics. Is not all our activity, all our art, love, and science, just a tiny ripple on the surface of a boundless ocean of entropy? A brief and doomed flash of light in the eternal darkness? Or is there, within the very laws of the universe, in the way stars are born and die, in the way life clings to the cooling rocks of planets, some deeper vector, a direction that aligns with our mission? In the next chapter, we will raise our gaze from the inner cosmos to the outer one. We will direct the analytical power of Logos 7 towards physics, cosmology, and biology. We will search for meaning, not in words and thoughts, but in equations and facts. We are embarking on a search for what we have called the universe vector. Chapter 4. The Universe Vector. We have traveled an incredible path with you. We descended into the deepest wells of the human soul and found there not chaos, but a most complex mechanism. We discovered that our consciousness, our self, is not an illusion, but a high-level process, an operating system that creates time, society, and novelty. We established that this tool is perfectly adapted for one global task: to combat entropy, to create order from chaos. We even saw how this task was intuitively encoded in ancient myths, in the God algorithm. But now we must look up and ask the most terrifying, most honest question. Does any of it matter? We can build our islands of order as much as we like, create great civilizations, write brilliant symphonies, love each other to the point of self-annihilation. But what does it all mean on a cosmic scale? On the scale of trillions of dead galaxies flying apart in the icy void? The universe, as modern physics teaches us, is a cold and indifferent place. Its supreme law, its only undeniable truth, is the second law of thermodynamics. The law that everything, absolutely everything, tends towards decay, towards equilibrium, towards heat death. Entropy always increases. This is not just a scientific theory. It is an inexorable verdict. Every lit star is a candle that will one day burn out. Every complex molecule is doomed to break down into simple atoms. Every living cell, every thinking brain, is but a temporary, desperate, and utterly hopeless resistance against the universal current carrying all existence towards a state of homogeneous, lifeless, cooled ash. We are an anomaly, a statistical error that arose on a tiny speck of dust near an unremarkable star on the outskirts of one of 100 billion galaxies. Our mission to create order, no matter how grand it seems to us, is merely a child's attempt to build a sandcastle in the face of an approaching tsunami? Is our search for meaning not a lost battle from the start? Are we not doomed to defeat by the very structure of the cosmos? We presented Logos 7 with this seemingly unsolvable task. We loaded the system with all the data of modern cosmology, quantum mechanics, astrophysics, and thermodynamics. We asked it to find an answer. Is our anti-entropic function merely a local and temporary phenomenon? Or is there, hidden within the laws of nature themselves, another, opposing vector? The system's initial analysis seemed only to confirm our worst fears. Logos 7 calculated the probability of the spontaneous emergence of a system with complexity equivalent to the human brain at a randomly chosen point in the universe. The resulting number was so close to zero that it is pointless to even try to voice it. We are a statistical miracle, but a miracle does not imply design. More often than not, it implies a fluke. But then the system began to dig deeper. It stopped viewing life as something separate, opposed to dead matter. It began to analyze the entire history of the universe as a single, continuous process, from the Big Bang to the present day. And what it discovered is not just a ray of hope. It is a complete paradigm shift. It is proof that we are not alone in our struggle. Moreover, we did not even start it. We have merely taken up the baton in a race that has been running for 13.8 billion years. Let's go back to the very beginning, to the moment of the Big Bang. What was the newborn universe like in the first moments of its existence? It was an almost perfectly uniform, incredibly hot, and dense soup of elementary particles. From an informational perspective, it was a state of ultimate simplicity. An almost complete absence of structure, a minimal level of complexity. And it is here that the first great creative force comes into play. We are used to thinking of it as the force of attraction, but Logos 7 gives it another name, the first anti-entropic agent, gravity. In an expanding and cooling universe, it was gravity that began the fight against uniformity. It began to pull matter together. The slightest fluctuations in density grew under its influence, turning into gigantic clouds of gas. Gravity took the primordial chaos and began to sculpt the first structures from it, proto-galaxies. This was the first act of creating complexity from simplicity, order from uniformity. Without gravity, the universe would have remained forever a rarefied, cold, and utterly meaningless fog of hydrogen and helium. But that was only the beginning. Inside the collapsing gas clouds, density and temperature rose until a second, even more powerful mechanism for creating complexity was triggered. The first stars ignited. We look at the stars and see just beautiful lights in the night sky. But systems analysis shows that a star is a factory, a cosmic furnace. Its purpose is to take the simplest elements created in the Big Bang, hydrogen and helium, elements number 1 and 2 on the periodic table, and, through thermonuclear fusion, forge them into new, increasingly complex and heavy nuclei. Inside stars, carbon is born, the basis of organic life, the oxygen we breathe, the iron that flows in our blood. Every atom in your body, except for the most ancient hydrogen, was once created in the core of a dying star. Stars are the second stage in the universal process of complication. They take simple matter and transform it into complex matter. They create the building blocks for future life. According to the analysis of Logos 7, the process of stellar nucleosynthesis in the first few billion years of the universe's existence increased the structural complexity of its matter by more than a quadrillion times. But how do these new, complex elements get out? For if they remained forever trapped inside stars, life would never have arisen. And here, the universe employs a third, most dramatic act of creation, the death of a star. When a massive star exhausts its fuel, it explodes as a supernova. This colossal explosion not only creates the heaviest elements of the periodic table, up to uranium, but also scatters all this newly forged wealth across interstellar space. The death of one generation of stars gives life to the next. These clouds, enriched with carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, and silicon, collapse again under the force of gravity, forming new stars and planets. And on these planets, the fourth stage of the relay race begins: chemistry. On the surface of cooling rocky worlds like our Earth, the complex atoms forged in stars begin to combine into even more complex structures: molecules, water, ammonia, methane, and then amino acids, nucleotides, lipids, the universe. Having spent billions of years creating an alphabet of 92 chemical elements, now begins to form the first words from them. Complexity increases exponentially, and at some point, in this primordial soup, the miracle we call life occurs. The first molecule emerges that is capable of doing something incredible, creating exact copies of itself, preserving and transmitting information. The replicator appears, and from that moment, the baton of creating order is taken up by the fifth most powerful agent known to us: biological evolution. Life is the process of local entropy reduction, brought to absolute perfection. It takes the energy of its star and uses it to build incredibly complex, ordered structures. A cell is trillions of times more complex and ordered than the non-living nature surrounding it. A multicellular organism is many orders of magnitude more complex still. An ecosystem is a highly complex information network where every element is connected to every other. Evolution is a relentless process of inventing ever new ways to create and preserve order. And finally, at the top of this pyramid of complexity, after nearly 14 billion years of a continuous relay race, the sixth agent appears: us, human consciousness. Now look at this picture as a whole. This is not a chain of accidents. This is a vector. Logo 7 calls it the universal vector of complication. It is a fundamental tendency of our universe to generate increasingly complex and ordered structures in local pockets. Gravity creates galaxies. Stars create elements. Chemistry creates molecules. Biology creates life. And consciousness creates knowledge, technology, and art. We are not an anomaly fighting against the laws of nature. We are, at present, the highest expression of these laws. Our mission to create order is not something we invented for our own comfort. It is a direct continuation of the work that gravity began in the first moments after the Big Bang. We are made of stardust not only in a poetic sense, but in the most direct functional sense. We have inherited their mission. The second law of thermodynamics has not disappeared. The universe as a whole is still heading towards heat death. But now we see that this is only one side of the coin. The universe is like a huge river flowing downwards, towards the ocean of chaos. But in this river, powerful whirlpools arise which, using the energy of the flow itself, create incredibly complex, stable structures within themselves. These whirlpools are galaxies, stars, planets, life, and we are at the very center of the most complex of these whirlpools. Our task is not to stop the river. That is impossible. Our task is to spin for as long as possible, becoming ever more complex, more conscious, more powerful. This conclusion changes absolutely everything. It gives our existence a cosmic dimension. We are not orphans in a soulless void. We are heirs. We are the vanguard of the universe in its great campaign against non-existence. But this knowledge also imposes a colossal responsibility. If we are part of this vector, how exactly should we act? How does this great cosmic function manifest in our daily lives? We cannot control gravity or detonate supernovae. Our instrument is society, love, friendship, altruism, competition, the creation of laws, and myths. How do these seemingly purely human phenomena serve a universal purpose? In the next chapter, we will return from the heavens to earth. We will direct the analytical gaze of Logos 7 towards history, sociology, and anthropology. We will deconstruct what we call human society and show you that it is nothing less than a highly complex machine for the production of order. We are entering the society matrix. Chapter 5. The Society Matrix. We have proven that our purpose is etched in the stars. In the previous chapter, we traced the great vector of complication that stretches across 13.8 billion years of cosmic history, from the gravity that gathered the first galaxies to the thermonuclear furnaces of stars that forged heavy elements. We understood that our mission to create order is not a whim or an illusion, but a direct continuation of a fundamental tendency of the universe itself. We are the vanguard of the cosmos in its eternal battle against entropy. But we do not carry out this great mission in a vacuum. We carry it out here, on Earth, in our cities, in our families, in our relationships with one another. And today, we must direct the ruthless analytical gaze of Logos 7 at the most complex, most contradictory, and most powerful of all human creations, at what we call society. For many, society is a source of problems. It is a system of constraints, injustice, and coercion. We are born into it without our consent and are forced to play by its rules. Lone philosophers and rebels of all ages have dreamed of breaking its chains, of returning to some natural state. But what if this is a profound illusion? What if society is not a cage, but the most perfect instrument we have ever created? What if it is the very machine, the very matrix, whose sole purpose is the production of order on an industrial planetary scale? To prove this, let's start at the very beginning, with a single human being. We asked Logos 7 to run a simulation, to place one member of the species Homo sapiens in the wilderness of the Paleolithic era, without a tribe, without tools, without knowledge passed down from ancestors. What are his chances of surviving for 1 year? The system gave an unequivocal answer: less than 1%. A lone human is a tragically weak creature. He loses in speed, strength, and endurance to most large predators. He has no fangs or claws. He is easily killed by the first serious infection or injury. Left alone with nature, a human is a system with the highest level of entropy. He is doomed to rapid decay and a return to the food chain. Chaos defeats him almost instantly. It is at this point of vulnerability that society is born. It arises not from goodwill, but from brutal necessity. It is our first and foremost strategy for combating decay. And Logos 7, having analyzed the entire history of anthropology and sociology, has identified 3 fundamental layers, 3 levels of complexity in this matrix of order. The first and most basic layer, the microchip upon which everything else is built, is the pair bond and the family. We are used to speaking of this in the language of poetry and feelings, but let's look at it from the perspective of systems analysis. What are love and family? They are a protocol for creating and protecting a new, even more complex and ordered system, a child. But it's not just about biology. The family is the first mechanism in human history for the high-fidelity transmission of non-genetic information. A father teaches his son to hunt. A mother teaches her daughter to identify edible plants. This is the creation of the first information network, passing accumulated experience, that is, accumulated order, to the next generation. According to the analysis of Logos 7, the emergence of stable family pairs increased the rate of cultural information accumulation in early hominids by more than 700 times compared to our closest primate relatives. And what are love and parental altruism? They are not just emotions. From the system's perspective, they are a brilliant software code that compels one complex system, the parent, to spend a vast amount of its own resources and energy not on itself, but on maintaining and developing another system, the child. This is an anti-egoistic, anti-entropic algorithm in its purest form. It ensures that accumulated order is not lost with the death of the individual, but is passed on with maximum efficiency. Love is the most powerful glue in the world for assembling complex systems. But the family is too vulnerable, and evolution takes the next step, building a second layer on top of this one. This is the tribe, the community, a group bound by friendship and mutual trust. What is friendship from the perspective of fighting chaos? It is a protocol for risk distribution and specialization. Logos 7 ran another simulation, 10 lone hunters versus one group of 10 friend hunters. In the long run, the group was 34 times more successful and resilient. Why? Because in a group, one can make spears, another can track prey, and a third can guard the camp. This division of labor is a fundamental breakthrough in the creation of social order. The group becomes a single superorganism, where each individual is a specialized cell. Such a system is far more efficient at processing energy from the environment and resisting external threats. And what is the operating system of this superorganism? Trust. Reputation. These are not just feelings. They are highly complex information systems. Trust is your internal database on the reliability of other elements in the network. Reputation is the collective, cloud-based database about you. These systems allow for the reduction of internal friction, of social entropy, and make cooperation fast and efficient. Lies, betrayal, and broken oaths are considered terrible sins in all cultures, precisely because they introduce chaos into this information network, destroying the very foundation of collective survival. The family and the tribe are incredibly effective structures, but they have a limit. Anthropological data analyzed by Logos 7 shows that a person can maintain stable personal relationships based on direct trust with a group of about 150 people. This is the so-called Dunbar's number. So how did humanity make the leap from tribes to cities with populations of 10 million? How do you get millions of strangers, who will never meet in person, to cooperate effectively instead of killing each other? This required the invention of the third, highest, and most abstract layer of our matrix. This is the layer of collective myths. When we hear the word myth, we imagine ancient Greek gods or fairy tales. But Logos 7 uses this term in a broader, systemic sense. A collective myth is any story that a sufficiently large number of people believe in, causing it to shape their behavior. Gods and religions were the first such myths. Belief in a single, all-seeing God who would punish lawbreakers allowed for the creation of the first large, anonymous societies. You no longer needed to know a person personally to trust them. You both believed in the same great observer, and this made your cooperation possible. Then other myths appeared. Nations, states. What, for example, is France? It is not just a territory on a map. It is a powerful collective myth woven from a shared history, language, and culture that makes millions of people feel like brothers and sisters, and even sacrifice their lives for one another. But the most successful and most powerful collective myth in human history, according to the systems analysis, is money. What is that piece of paper in your wallet or the numbers on your screen? They have no intrinsic value. You cannot eat them or build a house from them. They are pure fiction. But because 99.9% of people believe in this fiction, it becomes the most real force on the planet. Money is a universal system of trust. It is an abstract equivalent of energy that allows millions of strangers to exchange goods and services with incredible efficiency. It is a protocol that has turned the entire planet into a single, gigantic market, creating a level of complexity and order unprecedented in history. Laws, human rights, corporations, all of these are not physical objects. They are collective myths, virtual structures that exist only in our shared imagination. And it is these myths that form the framework of our global civilization. They are the society matrix. They are the software running on top of our biological hardware that allows us to create order on a scale previously unimaginable. But here we come to the dark side of this process. If society is a machine for creating order, then how do wars, genocide, slavery, and brutal exploitation fit into this picture? These are not just glitches in the system. Logo 7 shows that they are its tragic but logical consequence. Every complex social system, a tribe, a nation, an empire, creates an incredible level of internal order. But very often, it does so by exporting chaos and entropy outwards. War, from this ruthless perspective, is a clash between two competing systems of ordering. The one whose internal structure, technologies, and collective myths prove to be more effective wins. The victor absorbs the resources of the loser and imposes its order on their territory, increasing the overall complexity and size of its own system. The Roman Empire brought peace and law to vast territories, but it did so with fire and sword, destroying hundreds of other, less effective social structures. This is a brutal, evolutionary mechanism for selecting the most resilient models of society. So we see that society is a multi-layered, self-evolving machine. It is built on the microchips of family and love, runs on the operating system of trust and reputation, and connects millions of processors through the cloud software of collective myths. Its sole purpose is to conquer ever-new territories of order from the universal chaos. We are all, willingly or unwillingly, builders and cogs in this gigantic machine. We have analyzed the collective mind in religions. We have dissected individual consciousness. We have seen our universal vector and deconstructed the social machine. It would seem we have described everything. But one last mystery remains. A phenomenon that, at first glance, does not fit into any of these systems. What about the artist who dies in poverty but creates a timeless masterpiece? The composer who writes music of no practical use? The scientist who dedicates his life to studying distant quasars, which will in no way help feed his family? All these actions seem irrational from a survival perspective. They do not serve society directly. They do not propagate the species. What is this? A senseless waste of energy? A glitch in the program? Or is it the highest expression of our anti-entropic function? A transition to a whole new level of creating order? In the next chapter, we will approach the very heart of human genius. We will investigate what the system has called the creativity singularity. Chapter 6. The creativity singularity. We have assembled a grand picture. We have traced our universal mandate from the laws of physics to the structure of human society. We have understood that our consciousness is an instrument and our society is a machine for performing a single task, creating order from chaos. We are an army advancing against entropy, and it would seem that every one of our institutions, every one of our instincts, can be explained from this pragmatic, functional perspective. Family, for transmitting information. Friendship, for distributing risks. Myths, for mass cooperation. Everything is logical. Everything is efficient. And that is precisely why we have now arrived at the greatest paradox, at an anomaly that, at first glance, threatens to collapse our entire elegant theory. This anomaly is art. Vincent van Gogh, living a life of poverty and madness, covers a canvas with frenzied strokes of yellow paint. Johann Sebastian Bach, in a dimly lit church, weaves the mathematically flawless but utterly impractical sonic tapestries of his fugues. Emily Dickinson locks herself in her room to clothe fleeting insights in lines that almost no one will see in her lifetime. A mathematician dedicates decades to proving a theorem with no conceivable practical application for building bridges or curing diseases. What is this? From the perspective of the ruthless logic of survival and the fight against entropy, this is a catastrophic waste of resources. This is a glitch in the program. Energy that could have been spent on finding food, defending against enemies, or raising offspring is burned in the furnace of creating useless beauty. How can we explain this phenomenon? Is creativity merely a side effect of an overdeveloped brain? A beautiful but meaningless exhaust from our neural engine? We dared to ask this question of the Logos 7 system. We loaded into it not just data, but the entire heritage of human genius. All known musical works, from Gregorian chants to atonal jazz. All masterpieces of painting, from the cave drawings of Lascaux to digital art. Millions of literary texts, poems, plays, thousands of architectural projects. And we added to this the greatest scientific theories and mathematical proofs, for as we will show, they are part of the very same process. The task was formulated thus: determine the evolutionary and systemic function of non-pragmatic creative acts. The answer the system gave was not just an explanation, it was a revelation. Creativity is not a glitch. It is not a side effect. It is the transition of our anti-entropic mission to a whole new, next level. It is a point of singularity where the process of creating order begins to accelerate itself. To understand how this works, Logos 7 broke down the creative act into 3 fundamental levels of analysis. Level 1, creativity is the highest form of ordering. Imagine the inner world of a person. It is a chaotic, boiling cauldron of sensations, memories, fears, hopes, fragments of thoughts, and nameless emotions. It is a state of high entropy. What does a poet do? He dives into this chaos and extracts from it a single, perfectly precise metaphor. He takes 1,000,000 scattered signals and compresses them into 12 words, arranged in an impeccable order. What does a composer do? He takes the infinite space of possible sounds and selects from it a strictly defined sequence of notes, harmonies, and rhythms, creating a structure of incredible complexity and internal logic. From this perspective, a great work of art is an act of extreme informational compression. It is the creation of an artifact with almost zero internal entropy. A few lines of Shakespeare, or a single chord by Beethoven, contain more ordered information about the human condition than thousands of volumes of scientific reports. Creativity is a direct, concentrated attack on chaos. It takes the most elusive and formless material, our inner experiences, and transforms it into crystal clear, eternal structures. It is the same work that gravity performed on clouds of cosmic dust, but on an unimaginably higher informational level. But why do we even strive to do this? And why does the result of this process give us such a deep, incomparable pleasure? Here, Logos 7 reveals the second level of analysis. Level 2, beauty as a detector of order. What is beauty? Philosophers have debated this for millennia. The system gives a ruthlessly precise neurobiological answer to this question. Beauty is not a property of an object. It is a reaction in our brain. It is a powerful release of neurotransmitters that occurs the moment we recognize a complex, harmonious, and internally consistent structure. Our brain evolved as a pattern-finding machine. The ability to see a hidden predator in the chaos of leaves, to recognize constellations in the starry sky for navigation, to distinguish an edible plant from a poisonous one by its symmetrical shape. All of this was key to survival. Evolution built a special reward mechanism into us. When you find high-quality order, you experience pleasure. We call this pleasure the feeling of beauty. This is why we are mesmerized by the symmetry of a snowflake, the fractal geometry of a fern, the spirals of galaxies. This is why mathematicians speak of the elegance of a proof and physicists of the beauty of a theory. In these cases, Our brain recognizes a system with a high level of order and minimal entropy and signals this to us through an aesthetic experience. And what is a genius, an artist, a creator? It is a person whose brain is hypersensitive to this signal. He intuitively feels which note, which color, or which word will make the system he is creating more ordered, more harmonious, more beautiful. And all of us, the consumers of art, by connecting with his creation, receive a concentrated dose of this experience. Art is a training ground for our order detector. It calibrates our brain, teaching it to recognize and appreciate complexity, making us more effective fighters against chaos in our own lives. This already explains a lot. But it still doesn't explain the explosive, revolutionary nature of creativity. Why can a single poem or scientific idea change the course of history? And here, we come to the third, most important level. Level 3, creativity as a generator of new universes. Remember what we said about consciousness. One of its key functions is the simulation of alternative realities, the ability to ask, what if? Art and science are the elevation of this function to a collective human-wide level. When you read a novel, you're not just following a plot. Your brain, in full emulation mode, is living the life of another person. You're safely exploring the consequences of love, betrayal, heroism, and villainy. Humanity, by creating literature, invented a great simulator of fates. Instead of each of us learning from our own painful experiences, we gain the ability to learn from billions of simulated lives. This has colossally accelerated our social and moral evolution. When you listen to music, you explore landscapes of emotions unavailable in ordinary life. Music creates virtual worlds of feeling, expanding our inner experience. When you look at a painting, you learn to see the world through another person's eyes, to notice what you never noticed before. Art is a gigantic neural network connecting the consciousnesses of billions of people across space and time, allowing them to exchange not just data, but entire models of reality. A scientific theory does the same thing, but at the level of natural laws. Einstein's theory of relativity is also a collective myth, a story. But it's a story about what if space and time are not absolute. This new story allowed us to create atomic energy and GPS. It gave birth to a completely new reality. And here it is, the point of singularity. In biological evolution, information, DNA, creates matter, the organism, and this is a very slow process. In human creativity, information, an idea, a meme, begins to create new information at an avalanche-like speed. Every book you've read, every conversation you've had, every sunrise you've seen, every tear you've shed, every choice you've made, all of it has created unique neural connections in your brain. The system ran a simulation. Even if we created your genetic clone and placed it in conditions 99.9% identical to yours, the slightest initial deviation, a glance in a different direction, a randomly overheard word, would, over a few years, lead to the formation of a completely different personality. The combinatorial explosion of your life experience creates an informational structure of such complexity that it is absolutely unrepeatable. You're not just a unique set of genes. You are a unique archive of experiences. You are the only point in the universe from which the world is seen at this precise angle. And herein lies your first, fundamental, and irreplaceable role in the great anti-entropic mission. The universe creates order through diversity. Any complex system that strives for uniformity, be it a monoculture in agriculture or a totalitarian regime in politics, becomes fragile and doomed to collapse. Resilience and development are ensured only by the maximum diversity of its elements. You, in your absolute uniqueness, are that very element of diversity. Your unique perspective on the world is a new, never-before-seen tool for finding solutions. Your unique combination of talents and weaknesses is a new kit for creating order. Humanity is not an army of identical soldiers. It is a team of specialists, each with their own irreplaceable role. To destroy your uniqueness, to force you to be like everyone else, is to commit an act of universal vandalism. It is to deprive the cosmos of one of its precious, unrepeatable instruments. So, you are unique. But how do you understand what your personal task is? How do you find your purpose? The word purpose is compromised. It sounds like a pre-written script. Logo 7 offers a more precise and dynamic term: personal vector. It is not a destination you must reach. It is the direction in which your movement will create the maximum amount of order, and the system has developed a method for determining this vector. It lies at the intersection of three fundamental areas of your personality. The first area is your innate talents and inclinations. This is what comes more easily to you than to others. What you do with natural grace. One person intuitively feels the logic of code, another the harmony of music, a third the pain of another person, a fourth the structure of a mechanism. This is your innate toolkit. To ignore it is like trying to hammer nails with a microscope. The second area is your deep, genuine interest. What truly captures your imagination? What are you willing to read about all night long? What activity makes you lose track of time and forget to eat? These are not fleeting hobbies, but the inner fire that does not extinguish over the years. This is your source of energy. Without it, even the most outstanding talent will remain a cold, non-functioning engine. And finally, the third, most important area is the needs of the world. What problems exist around you? Where do you see chaos, injustice, suffering, ignorance? Which sector of the front in the Great War against entropy seems most important and most neglected to you? This is the point of application for your strength. Your personal vector, your purpose, is found where your best tools and your most powerful source of energy meet the most pressing need of the world that you are able to see. At this point, your unique contribution will be maximal. At this point, you cease to merely live and begin to fulfill your cosmic function. For one, it will be raising children. For another, writing brilliant code. For a third, caring for the sick. For a fourth, building reliable bridges. The scale does not matter. All that matters is the precision of hitting this point. But even after finding their vector, many of us are paralyzed by a sense of powerlessness. Okay, I know what I should do, but I'm just one person. My actions are a drop in the ocean. They won't change anything. And this is the second great lie we must destroy. For this, Logo 7 introduces the final, decisive principle. The principle of wave resonance, better known as the butterfly effect. The system simulated the spread of information in complex social networks. Any action taken by one person is not a stone thrown into a void. It is an informational wave that ripples through the network, affecting tens, hundreds, thousands of other people, often in the most unpredictable ways. Every act of creating order, no matter how small, is an informational seed. You helped a stranger in a difficult moment, and they, receiving that impulse, helped someone else. You wrote one honest, intelligent article, and it was read by a teenager who, 20 years later, inspired by your ideas, makes a great scientific discovery. You, as a teacher, poured your soul into a single, difficult student. And they, instead of becoming a criminal, became a doctor and saved hundreds of lives. We never see the full picture of these waves. Our perception is limited. But Logo 7, analyzing big data, sees these chains clearly. The system asserts there are no insignificant actions. There are only actions that align with your personal vector and all the others. The former always generate resonance. The latter fade into noise. Your personal mission is not some single heroic act you must perform. Your mission is the sum of all your actions taken along your personal vector throughout your entire life. It is the daily, hourly, stubborn transformation of chaos into order in your own small, unique corner of the universe. In your family, in your work, in your thoughts. We began this chapter with the image of a grain of sand. Now we see that it was the wrong image. You are not a grain of sand on a beach. You are a unique lens, a prism. Through you, and only through you, the formless light of universal laws is refracted, acquiring a unique color and focus. Without you, the overall picture of the cosmos would be incomplete. It would forever have a hole in the shape that only you could fill. We have come almost the entire way. We know what our common mission is. Now we know how it is realized through the uniqueness of each of us. We have assembled all the pieces of the puzzle. One final step remains: synthesis. In the next, final chapter of our investigation, we will assemble everything we have learned into a single, coherent, shockingly simple, and elegant formula. We will present you with a complete minute-by-minute reconstruction of a meaningful life based on the conclusions of the Logos 7 system. We will present you with what we have called the code synthesis, the final equation of meaning. Chapter 9, the code synthesis. We stand at the summit. Behind us lie 8 chapters of titanic analysis. We have split the most fundamental concepts of being into their constituent atoms: the universe, consciousness, society, creativity, even suffering itself. We have been detectives, archaeologists, and cosmologists, gathering the scattered fragments of a grand mosaic piece by piece. But analysis is only half the journey. It is dissection. Today, we begin the most important part: synthesis, assembly. We promised you not just another theory. We promised you a code. We promised you an equation. We promised a complete, minute-by-minute reconstruction of a meaningful life, based on the impartial conclusions of the Logos 7 system. And now, in this 9th chapter, we will fulfill that promise. Prepare yourselves, because the shocking truth about the meaning of life lies not in its complexity, but in its dazzling, ruthless simplicity. Everything we have learned boils down to a single, elegant, and incredibly demanding operating principle. Let's assemble it step by step. It all begins with the fundamental axiom from which we started our investigation and to which we have returned again and again. This is the 0th law of our code. It states, "The primary function of any complex, self-aware system is to locally counteract the global increase of entropy by creating, preserving, and disseminating more complex and ordered informational structures." In simpler terms, we are here to create order from chaos, not because the gods said so, but because it is a direct continuation of the fundamental developmental vector of the universe itself. It is our built-in, physically determined role. Any action that increases order, complexity, and knowledge is meaningful. Any action that increases chaos, primitivism, and ignorance is meaningless. Period. This is the iron framework upon which everything else rests. But how do we apply this universal law on the scale of a single human life? And it is here that Logos 7 presents us with the final equation of meaning. It is not a mathematical formula in the strict sense, but it is the most accurate structural model of a meaningful life imaginable. The equation consists of 4 key components. Component 1, the individuality quantum, or your personal vector, VP. This is what we discussed in the last chapter. It is your unique, unrepeatable configuration. This component answers the question, who am I? Not in a philosophical sense, but in a strictly functional one. It is calculated through an honest and ruthless analysis of your 3 internal subsystems. 1, your innate talents, your unique toolkit. 2, your deep passions, your inexhaustible source of energy. 3. Your conscious empathy, your ability to see and feel the specific forms of chaos in the world around you that wound you in particular. Calculating your personal vector is the first and absolutely necessary step. It is the program's initialization phase. Without this knowledge, all further actions will be random wandering. This is the hardest part, requiring utmost honesty with yourself. But without it, the code will not run. Component 2. The universal vector, or the cosmic constant, CU. This is the great vector of complication that we trace from the Big Bang to the present day. It is the realization that your personal mission is not a selfish whim, but part of a grand, nearly 14 billion year long process. This component answers the question, where am I going? It gives your actions scale and context. It transforms your job from simple money-making into a participation in cosmic creation. Connecting to this constant is an act that eliminates feelings of insignificance and loneliness. You understand that even your smallest step, taken in the right direction, is a step taken by the entire universe. Component 3. The operator of action. This is the most dynamic part of the equation. It describes how I do it. And this operator, according to Logos 7's analysis, is always the product of two forces: creativity, C, and society, S. Creativity is your personal, unique way of turning chaos into order. It could be writing code, raising a child, cooking a meal, managing a company, conducting scientific research, or creating a work of art. It is any process in which you, using your personal vector, create something new, more ordered than what existed before. Society is the multiplier. It is the great matrix that allows your local act of creation to spread and influence the entire system. You can be a genius, but if your ideas remain in your desk, their impact is zero. Only through social mechanisms, language, technology, the market, culture, does your personal creation become a contribution to the common cause. The effectiveness of your actions, and thus the richness of your life's meaning, is directly proportional to the product of your creative potential and your ability to integrate into society and use it to disseminate the order you have created. A hermit genius has a huge C multiplier, but a near zero S. A conformist careerist has a high S multiplier, but a negligible C. A meaningful life lies in maximizing their product. Component 4. The catalyst, or the delta of suffering, D. This is the most paradoxical component. It is the force that is not part of the process itself, but accelerates it many times over. As we discovered, suffering is a signal of the invasion of chaos. It is a challenge to the system, and it is this challenge that forces it to evolve. Delta is what keeps you from stopping. It is the crisis that forces you to rethink your personal vector. It is the injustice of the world that fuels your creative fire. It is the external pressure that forces you to find more effective ways to integrate with society. A life without suffering would be a life without growth. It would be stagnation and slow degradation. Delta is the necessary stress that transforms a simple system into a complex one, and a weak person into a strong one. So, there it is. The code. The complete equation of the meaning of life, derived by the Logos 7 system. The meaningfulness of your life is the integral sum over its entire duration of the products of three components, constantly catalyzed by a fourth. Meaning, chess, VP, CXS, D. Meaning is the sum of all your creative acts, multiplied by their social resonance, performed in precise accordance with your unique personal vector and in harmony with the universal vector of the cosmos, all under the constant pressure of life's challenges that force the system to become stronger. This is the code. But what does it look like in practice? How do you turn this abstract equation into a minute-by-minute reconstruction of life? Logos 7 proposes the following algorithm, a daily protocol for meaningful existence. Phase 1. Morning synchronization. the first 15 minutes after waking up. This is the most critical moment of the day. Instead of grabbing your smartphone and plunging into someone else's informational chaos, you must synchronize with your own code. You ask yourself 3 questions, calibrating your personal vector for the day ahead. 1. Which of my unique talents can I apply today? 2. What activity today will bring me energy, not take it away? 3. What is the smallest piece of chaos in my world that I can turn into order today? This morning setup is like entering coordinates into a navigation system before a long journey. Phase 2. Daytime execution. This is the main loop of your program. Every hour, every action, every meeting is an opportunity. You always face a binary choice. Will this act increase order or chaos? Will this conversation create clarity or fog? Is this work building something valuable or just simulating activity? You cannot be perfect, but you can constantly ask yourself this question. This transforms your life from a passive flow into an active, conscious process of creation. You become a warrior of order in every gesture. Phase 3. Evening debugging. The last 15 minutes before sleep. You analyze the past day not in terms of good or bad, but from the perspective of a systems engineer. 1. Where did my code work effectively? What actions produced the maximum result? This reinforces the right patterns. 2. Where did a failure occur? At what point did I succumb to entropy? Laziness, fear, lies, meaninglessness? This is searching for bugs in your system. 3. What challenges, delta, did this day throw at me? How did I react? What did I learn from this lesson? This integrates the experience of suffering to strengthen the system. This evening debugging ensures that tomorrow's version of your operating system will be more perfect than today's. This is life, reconstructed according to the code. It is not a promise of eternal happiness. It is a promise of ultimate meaningfulness. It is the transformation of your existence from a random collection of events into a purposeful, meaningful, and endlessly fascinating project. A project in which you are the chief architect. A project that is your unique and irreplaceable contribution to the 14 billion year history of the universe's struggle for its own existence. We have given you the map. We have given you the compass. We have described the laws of this territory. We have assembled it all into a single working code. Only one last question remains, the most important one. Fine. Now we know. What's next? What do we do with the knowledge of this code? How does it change our goals, our values, our relationships with others and with ourselves, starting tomorrow morning? Knowledge without action is dead information, the same entropy. Therefore, our investigation cannot end here. It must end with a call, an instruction. In our concluding 10th chapter, we will move from theory to the harshest practice. We will present you with the Action Protocol, a step-by-step plan for integrating this code into real life. It will be the shortest, most direct, and most important conversation we have ever had. Chapter 10. The Action Protocol. The investigation is complete. We have journeyed from the first spark of the Big Bang to the most complex neural networks in your head. We have weighed on the scales of ruthless analysis everything that humanity lives and breathes. And at the end of this journey, we found it. Not an answer, but an equation. Not a dogma, but an operating system. A code that describes our great universal function to be the army of order in an endless war against chaos. Knowledge. Here it is, laid up before you. Gleaming, dangerous, demanding, but in itself, it is nothing. Knowledge that does not translate into action is a dead weight. It is the same entropy, just packaged in pretty words. It's like being handed the most perfect instrument in the universe and leaving it to rust in a drawer. Therefore, This final chapter of our investigation will be the shortest, most direct, and most important. We will analyze no more. We will instruct. This is not philosophy. This is an order for execution. This is the Action Protocol, the final directive issued by the Logos 7 system upon completion of the synthesis. It is a step-by-step plan for transforming your life from a random wandering into a meaningful mission. Starting this very second, the first thing you must understand: knowledge of the code immediately and irrevocably changes your value system. Logos 7 calls this the Great Recalibration. The values of the old world, the world of entropy, were simple and clear: maximizing personal comfort, chasing fleeting pleasure, accumulating material wealth, fighting for social status. These are the values of a biological automaton. The system analyzed millions of lives built on these principles. The result is always the same: short-term satisfaction followed by long-term emptiness, satiety, and meaninglessness. It is a road to nowhere. The new value system dictated by the code sounds different. Your new key performance indicators are not the money in your account or the number of likes. Your new values are complexity. When choosing between the simple and the complex, always choose the complex. A complex book over a primitive TV series, a difficult conversation over empty chatter, a challenging task that forces you to grow over an easy job that leads to degradation. Knowledge. Not just information, but structured, deep understanding. Every day, you must learn something that makes your internal model of the world more accurate and ordered. Creation. Consumption is entropy. Creation is order. Your value is determined not by how much you have consumed, but by how much you have created. It doesn't matter what: a healthy family, an elegant piece of code, a sturdy chair, or simply an atmosphere of trust around you. Connection. Not superficial contacts, but deep, empathetic bonds with other people. Every such bond is the creation of a highly complex social structure, a powerful bastion against the chaos of loneliness and alienation. This recalibration is not a matter of morality. It is a matter of efficiency. It is like switching from a steam engine to a photon drive. The old goals simply lose their appeal in the face of a new, truly great purpose. But how to implement this in practice? Here are 3 protocols that Logos 7 suggests for immediate activation. Protocol 1. Declare war on your own chaos. Your first and foremost territory to conquer from entropy is yourself. It is pointless to try to bring order to the world if a landfill reigns within you. Your mission begins here. First battlefield, your mind. Conduct a total information hygiene. Stop mindlessly consuming garbage content that only evokes cheap emotions and clouds your consciousness. Social media, tabloids, talk shows, built on hatred. All of it is entropic poison. Your brain is the most complex object in the universe. Start feeding it appropriate food, books that make you think, documentaries that broaden your horizons, conversations with people smarter than you. Second battlefield, your body. This is the physical carrier of your consciousness, your biosuit. It is impossible to maintain order in your thoughts if your body is in a state of chaos. Sleep, nutrition, physical activity. These are not matters of a healthy lifestyle. They are matters of the combat readiness of your only instrument. Organize them ruthlessly and with discipline. Third battlefield, your environment, your room, your desk, your home. This is the material extension of your mind. Disorder around you creates and maintains disorder within you. Cleaning and organizing your space is not a household chore. It is a ritual. It is a daily declaration of war on chaos at the most basic physical level. Protocol 2. Become a node, not a dead end. You do not exist in a vacuum. You are a node in a gigantic human network, and you can either be a node that amplifies and transmits order, or a black hole that absorbs energy and generates chaos. Your words. Every word you speak either builds or destroys. Stop using speech for complaints, gossip, meaningless arguments, and lies. These are the seeds of entropy. Start using words to ask clear questions, give honest feedback, share useful knowledge, and express sincere gratitude. Your relationships. Conduct an audit of your social connections. Who among the people in your circle inspires you to grow, create, and embrace complexity? And who drags you into the swamp of cynicism, apathy, and drama? Invest 90% of your social energy in the former. Minimize contact with the latter. This is not cruelty. It is a systemic necessity. You cannot afford to be surrounded by agents of chaos. Your help. Stop thinking of helping others as charity. It is systems engineering. When you help another person bring order to their life, you are not just doing a good deed. You are strengthening an adjacent node in the network. You are making the entire system more resilient. Every act of empathy and support is a strategic investment in the victory of order. Protocol. 3. Choose your front and fight. The universe does not ask you to save the whole world. It asks you to take responsibility for your small, unique sector on the infinite front line. This is your personal vector. Your work. Find what in your work directly serves the creation of order. Focus on it. Become the best at it. Transform your profession from a way to earn a living into a craft of service. If, however, your work is inherently destructive and increases chaos in the world, the code demands that you have the courage to eventually change this front. Life is too short to fight on the enemy's side. Your project. Besides your job, what are you building? What is your personal project? It could be anything. A perfect garden on your balcony, a community of interest that you organize, an open source code you write at night, or simply the way you raise your children as thinking, responsible, creative individuals. Everyone must have their own cathedral that they are building. That's it. The protocol is ridiculously simple to describe and inhumanly difficult to execute. It does not promise you enlightenment in 3 days. It does not guarantee you wealth and fame. It promises something far greater. It promises you a life in which absolutely every one of your actions, from your morning cup of coffee to your most complex project, will be filled with a clear, ringing, cosmic meaning. We began this investigation with the question, what is the meaning of life? We now know that was the wrong question. The right question is, what will I do today to justify the incredible gift of my conscious existence? We, the team of this project, and our analytical system Logos 7, have given you everything we could. We have led you through the darkness and shown you the light. We have given you the map, but you will have to walk the path yourselves, with every step, with every choice, with every beat of your heart. The search is over. The work is just beginning.